Greetings, venerable members of the YouTube community, and greetings also, thank you very much to my 21 subscribers, who I'm now going to name. Philip de Romanus, Recipes from a Hat, Cupcakes Are Good 3, Helmet Comedy, KASI Productions, or Cassie, Fading Sapphire, My Name Is Not Maddie, Charlie and Josh, X-Rach 2006X, Catharsis 316, Zooey 07, Rabina 00, Philip J. Schaufenfreud, I'm probably mispronouncing that, Lame Name Rodriguez, Matt Nejata, Yummy Chippy, Ars JCWW, KG48, Peas Mold, and Tabaham. I apologise if I've mispronounced any of your names. I just apologise. I know some of you IRL, so that won't matter too much. But yes, anyway, on to today. Before I continue, again, some housekeeping issues. Number one, next week's video may be slightly delayed by 1 or 2 days. The reason being is that, I think as I mentioned in another video recently, I am moving back to the UK. I've been living in Prague for a year now, and as you can imagine, in a year you accumulate a lot of stuff. So I've got to move everything back to the UK, and as a result, this may not be my top of the list of priorities of things to do on Saturday, so I apologise in advance for that. So yes. Second thing, this is actually coming to you, I'm actually recording this quite late. I don't know if you can see the clock over there. Yeah, that is a clock. It's a very weird clock, but it's 3 o'clock in the morning here. It really shouldn't be. I've had some, I've been doing some other things which I shouldn't have been doing, but I can't make the video during the day tomorrow because I'm busy all day. I'm helping out with a concert called Heartbeat in the Czech Republic, so I'm helping out with that. So I can't make this today, so I'm making this quite late at night, so I'm going to try and be quick about it. As you can see, we've got the suggestions for this week, all 198 of them. We've had over 80 suggestions this week from people, and I'd like to thank all of those people, particularly with the Ning. They were very helpful, and other people as well, people on Facebook and various places, and people who I speak to on MSN. So yes, in here we have 198 suggestions, and now, the moment you've all been waiting for, I'm going to read you the extract for this week. Chapter titled by Helmet Comedy, The Sword Was Mightier Than the Pen. A few tables across, there was, what seemed to Jane, an oddly mismatched couple. She'd never quite gotten over the idea that couples are supposed to somehow look right. She didn't quite understand it, but there was this thought in her head that if two people are in some kind of intimate relationship, they really should look like they fit together in some way, as if they were two pieces of furniture in a well-decorated room. These two, however, from the way they looked, seemed to be very mismatched. The gentleman, though he was sitting down, Jane guessed, when standing up, would have been at least 6'7". He was exceptionally pale-faced, of very Germanic temperament, Jane assumed. She had at first thought him to be in his early 20s, but revised that estimate when it became clear that his expression lines dated him beyond that boundary. His hair was something of a bizarre oddity. It was as if his head was a conical flask and the reaction taking place inside gave off a pale, gingerish-coloured gas that was slightly heavier than air. Thin in quantity but thick in shade was the best way Jane could think about the strands of protein that adorned his crown. A blazing hot tone, yet slightly dulled, like an old fire whipping in the wind. Wearing a greyish faded jacket and a red shirt and off-white linen trousers, Jane didn't know these two well enough to know what his companion saw in him, but she hoped it wasn't his fashion sense. It was true, however, that the thick, black-rimmed, rectangular glasses he wore did give him an air of the cute nerd, slowly emerging from his shell, which Jane could see to be something to the girl's taste. The woman who sat opposite him was very different. She was much shorter, Jane guessed. She would only go up to his elbow when she stood up. She had a much rounder figure as well, proportioned, but clearly well padded, not anything like those people in the shop floor earlier, thank goodness. This woman knew how to dress for her shape, wearing a tastefully loose black shirt, long denim skirt, and a pale blue cashmere scarf, which looked to have been removed from the wearing around her head. Jane thought that could mark her out as a Muslim, but she didn't know any Muslims who took it as a point to remove their head coverings for sitting down with a coffee with a friend. She had a beautifully dignified air about her, in the same way her friend had an endearing sense of eccentricity. Her long hair reached down just below her shoulder blades, and it was as black as the gaps between the stars. Her eyes looked to be something of the Far East, but not quite as far as, say, Japan or China, but perhaps intermingled with some more Anglo-Saxon heritage somewhere down the line. Her complexion, too, was a curiously Mediterranean tone, not a shade of tan brown you would associate with Arabs or a woman of the Orient, but more olive brown. She was clearly a very cosmopolitan woman, and he didn't think that fit that archetype at all. Jane was slightly shocked to discover that on the left hand of her table there was a W.H. Smith bag which contained a copy of the Daily Mail. She shook her head in bewilderment and headed off to the other newsagents to pick up her preferred reading material. A minute or so later, after a brief exchange with the proprietor of the establishment, Jane walked out with a copy of Time magazine rolled up into her pocket and poking out of her pocket of her jeans. As liberal as a left-leaning a publication as it might be, Time could be a ruthless border guard patrol when she needed to be, protecting the Nokia in her pocket from the illegal immigration of pickpocketing hands in a manner that would make Chuck Norris proud. She headed along the top floor towards the cafe, the sun casting her shadow with clear definition on the polished tiles below her feet. She looked at it with a degree of fascination as to how she could see the shadow becoming less defined the further up her body the part that was being outlined was. There was a soft focused blurriness to the shadow of her head, while her feet were picked out in high def. She knew the reason for this, of course, but that didn't stop her admiring the beauty of it. As she walked along, another mystery seemed to appear, in the dark outlines of the floor. Just above her own, she saw a somewhat irregular, yet moderately clearly defined shadow scurry its way across the glass tiles. She was looking at the shape and thought it was too large to be a bird or someone's cat that had somehow got loose, and was about to look up when instead something went down to her. She jumped backwards with shock, as in front of her, almost grazing her head, dropped a thick black rope with a leather-bound weight on the end. Looking at it, for her first reaction, aside from the obvious internal "what the heck?" was that it was a pretty substantial-looking thing for what it was. Old rope, it seemed, that had been painted black for some reason or other. A second or so later, another dropped down through the glass a few yards away from the first, and then another. Within less than 20 seconds, 5 of the things were hanging from the roof, and not just where Jane was standing. She looked over at the other parts of the centre and across on the other side of the top floor where there were 5 more, and yet another 5 on the far corner. As Jane looked up, she saw where they were all coming, who was coming down them. Sliding down the ropes in highly dramatic style were 5 men, all quite well built and fit, their exact frames, however, concealed within a slightly loose-fitting single black cotton costume. The only area of skin exposed to the elements were their eyes, which darted around with purposeful menace. Secured by a sash to each of their backs was a sword, a curved Japanese blade in a black sheath, and tied to their belts was a piece of coiled rope with a grappling hook on the end, along with sundry other small swords and equally scary pointy objects. Jane knew only one word to describe someone looking like that: ninjas. Ninjas in Croydon Centre. Strangeness of indeed. But yes, if you want to know exactly what the heck is going on there, read the chapter. Anyway, this week's selection. So let's poke my fingers around in here. I forgot the fork today. I sort of realised that halfway through the video. Irritatingly forgot the fork. Okay, selection. We've got a bit of paper in my fingers. We've got 2 bits of paper in my fingers. Let's start again. Number 64. 64. Okay, 64 is Undiscovered Writing Utensils. Undiscovered Writing Utensils by Imperfectly Perfect 2. Undiscovered Writing Utensils. That's going to be an interesting one. I like that. Undiscovered Writing Utensils. Okay, well, you'll see the full chapter on the blog, and see you next week. I hope you enjoyed that extract of the first chapter, the second chapter rather, by Helmet Comedy there. Well, the chapter by me, titled by Helmet Comedy. So yeah, enjoy that, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.